My name is Xavier, and in this video I'm going to give you a brief introduction to many, but not all, of the new mechanics in Long War II. Let's jump right into the biggest mechanics change in Long War II, which is infiltration. Your small guerrilla force will need to spend time infiltrating an area prior to launching a mission to suss out the weakest link in enemy patrols, or, alternatively, you could go in hot and heavy without infiltrating, but this will be a significant risk, given Advent's numerical advantage. This particular mission has 8 days and 17 hours before it expires. This will be a good example to showcase the different options for infiltrating. Now before we get into it, 0 to 200% is the scale for infiltrating. You can't go less than 0 and you can't go over 200. 100% infiltration is considered the baseline. That's what you should be striving for in most missions. Over here on the left we see baseline enemy activity. This means that at 100% infiltration we will encounter an extremely light number of enemies. And extremely light is 6 to 9. Very light would be 10 to 12, and light would be 13 to 15, and it keeps going up in increments of 3 all the way to swarming in the 30s. So our options are as such. Number 1, we could bring a huge squad if we wanted to, a full squad of 10. These soldiers will take 24 days and 14 hours to hit 100% infiltration. We only have 8 days and 17 hours. At best, they will hit 35% or so infiltration, and at that point we can expect dozens more enemies to be present on the mission beyond the extremely light 6 to 9. Option number 2, we could try to just hit 100% without going over. This squad of 6 here, actually 7 days, 19 hours, that's less than 8 days and 17 hours, meaning they can hit 100% infiltration, at which point if we launch the mission, they'll be guaranteed to fight 6 to 9 enemies. That's not bad. And option number 3 doesn't really apply in this scenario because extremely light is the lowest possible enemy activity that you can encounter, which is 6 to 9 aliens. But let's say the baseline activity was higher, hypothetically, like let's say this was a tough mission and the baseline was light. If we wanted to, we could over-infiltrate, bring a very small squad of 3, 2, 1, etc., and try to get our total infiltration very low and over-infiltrate up to 200% to try to reduce the baseline enemy activity from what the default is at 100%. As you can imagine, there's a wealth of options, and there's all kinds of additional things that can affect infiltration, such as officer perks, the size of your weapons, SMGs are more stealthy, of course, suppressors, various pieces of gear. So this mechanic really keeps every mission completely variable throughout the entire campaign, and you're going to be bringing squads of even down to 1 and all the way up to 10 all throughout the whole campaign. Alright, let's go check out the strategy map changes. So the first thing to note is that Advent is constantly running activities in regions all around the world, all throughout the campaign. And in order to counter these activities, you're going to need to first detect them, which we can do in the new Haven management. So each regional Haven now has individual rebels with their own unique name, portrait. They can even rank up twice. This particular rebel has 1 rank, you can see here. And they can even get some tactical perks each time they get an additional rank. But in each Haven you can have a total of 13 rebels that are assigned to work on different jobs. You can have more rebels in a Haven, it's just the additional ones cannot work jobs. So the first job is Intel, which essentially tasks the rebels with discovering the activities that we were just talking about. And generally speaking, the more rebels you have assigned to Intel, the more activities you're going to detect. But more importantly, the sooner you may detect those activities before their preset expiration date, and thus the longer you'll have to infiltrate them before they expire. In this particular Haven, I have everyone set up to work the Intel job because I want to find one mission specifically. I don't want a whole bunch of missions. I want to find one specific mission with a very long time before it expires so I can bring a huge squad after infiltrating. Should also note that using the Avenger to scan on a region adds an additional 4 rebels worth of intel generation. So this Haven has 11 rebels working on intel, the Avenger will actually bump that up to 15. Also, each rank that a rebel has makes them 50% better at producing whatever it is they're producing. So Ho-Ho is actually producing 150% of a rebel worth of intel, because he has 1 rank. So having this many people on Intel is going to produce a lot of missions, even though that's not my goal, or it's going to detect a lot of activities that we can run missions to counter, that is. But not every mission is meant to be attempted by XCOM. If you have this many people on Intel, you're most likely going to generate a lot of bad missions that you probably should not even attempt. And in a regular campaign, I would say you should be skipping dozens and dozens, maybe even skipping more missions than you attempt. Now that's perfectly normal in Long War II. Choosing which missions to devote resources to is going to be a very daunting task for every commander in every campaign, in my opinion. Should be warned though, the more rebels you assign to work in a region, the higher chance that Advent's going to hear them or notice them doing whatever it is they do, and thus the more retaliations they're likely to launch against your otherwise vulnerable rebels. And this is where the next job comes into play, hiding. So rebels in hiding aren't contributing in any way. However, they're also not being detected in any way by Advent. So if there's a lot of activity or you just generated a lot of activity and you want to avoid a retaliation, you can set everyone into hiding, or set a lot of people into hiding but not everyone to reduce the chance of Advent striking with a retaliation. The next job is supply, which is pretty straightforward. Rebels will gather supplies, and at the end of the XCOM month, they'll drop them off in the supply drop, which you can go pick up. And lastly is recruit. Rebels set to recruit will scour the region, basically looking for additional rebels who want to join, or even rookies that might want to join your XCOM forces that you can then go recruit through the Avenger. And lastly, any one of these rebels or more, any one or more of these rebels could in fact be an enemy infiltrator, which you'll have to suss out. And the way we do that is with liaisons. So up here in the liaison slot, you can see there's 3 different options for liaisons. You can have a soldier who's squatty rank or higher assigned to the liaison, an engineer, or even one of your scientists. Soldier liaisons will help with recruiting, in addition to the rebels that you assign to recruit, and in addition, they'll be detecting or attempting to detect local enemy infiltrators. Engineers will increase the effectiveness of the local rebels on supply jobs, and scientists will increase the effectiveness of local rebels who are working the intel job. It's worth noting that XCOM soldiers stationed as liaisons are more effective with the higher rank that they have, and also with the more officer promotions they have. One final note on the strategy map is that Advent is ever vigilant and will not turn a blind eye to XCOM repeatedly countering their operations. They're going to respond by reinforcing the most heavily hit regions with additional troop columns, supply convoys, and even emergency UFOs. Regardless, this Advent vigilance can be a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they're going to have a whole bunch more strength gathered in a region, which is going to make every mission you attempt there more difficult. On the other hand, all of these troop columns, supply convoys, and potentially even UFOs present quite a high-value opportunity for a cunning commander who's up to the challenge. Lastly, let's cover some tactical changes. There's far too many to list, so I'm just going to highlight some of the most important ones. First up, Advent is considerably more intelligent in their patrolling and purpose, and will now go on alert when they hear sounds, and they'll move to investigate. In this situation, this Advent pod is closely patrolling around this objective, and we can't move to it with our shinobi without being spotted. So I'm going to initiate a sneaky distraction by moving our ranger out of line of sight, and then throwing a grenade away from the objective to get their attention. Now, not only can you use sound as a distraction, but you can also use quieter methods to dispatch of enemy pods, such as swords or suppressed SMGs and a myriad of other options, to avoid drawing attention to your location. Yeah, and as we end the turn here, you'll see the pod notices the sound and they move away to investigate, leaving an opportunity for our shinobi to move up to the objective without being spotted. Of course, the inverse is also true, and you can use a rocket to level a building if you want to draw nearly every enemy in an entire map to come to your location. But be wary of doing this now, as enemies can react when activated during their own turn, as you're about to see in the next example. In this situation, we're going to move into this building and we're going to spook a civilian, who in vanilla didn't really matter. They would just be there and not really do anything. But now in Long War II, they'll run into the street yelling. And that normally wouldn't matter, except there happens to be an Advent pod out of line of sight nearby patrolling in the streets who hears this civilian and goes on alert. Now, because this pod was on alert when they were activated, from the yelling of the civilian running into the street, they're allowed to take offensive actions like this sentry shooting at Mitch here. Had that pod activated on their own turn when they were not on alert, they wouldn't have been allowed to have taken offensive actions like shooting. They would have had to have just hunkered down or something like that. And of course we have to talk about grenades. So it used to be in vanilla XCOM 2 that you would just get your 2 pieces of loot and then you'd use grenades to kill everything and everyone and destroy every piece of cover in the entire map. But no longer. Both of those are fixed in Long War II. You can see here I already have 2 pieces of loot on the ground, and I'm about to get 2 more after this shot. So there's significantly more loot drops in Long War II, I think up to 6 per mission, and each one contains less individual loot. You can see here we're actually taking a risky move to run someone down to grab 2 pieces of loot before they expire. There's another pod that's going to be patrolling in after this, and we also have to move up and grab the next 2 pieces of loot after even we just grabbed those last 2. And here's a good example of grenades in Long War II. They don't destroy anywhere near as much cover when you first get them. If you want to have the same cover destruction as before, you're going to have to invest multiple perks through the engineer tree. So all in all, there's a lot more reasons to be moving around and exploring the map in Long War II before engaging with hostile enemies. And of course, we can't just have things be simple, so there's a lot more enemies who now have very long sight ranges, like this drone here who just spotted a shinobi from like a mile away with an SMG equipped who is very stealthy. There's also a myriad of solo drone pods in major advent cities all around the world, so be on the lookout for those. One of the things I'm most happy about in Long War 2 though is something you'll probably never even really see, and it's the experience system overhaul. No longer is it primarily kill-based, but instead it's now primarily mission-based with a small fraction coming from kills. So mission experience is based on the initial number of enemies on a mission, and you don't get any mission experience for reinforcements. So sticking around to farm reinforcements and Overwatch traps is really no longer any tangible benefit to the player. In fact, now that reinforcements don't drop loot, they scale up in difficulty and volume the longer you're in a region, and their drop zones have been obscured, there's really no reason to fight them at all, and that really, for me, enhances the guerrilla narrative of get in, hit the objective, and get out as fast as possible. And finally, I'm just going to leave you with one last tip that I myself seem to always forget. Remember to drop your EVAC flares the second you engage the enemy, because they now scale in time until Firebrand arrives, based on the size of the squad you have and how well infiltrated. This large squad that was poorly infiltrated has an 8-turn EVAC delay. So that does it for this intro video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy playing Long War 2. I've spent the better part of the last year playing it myself, and I'm really excited to see everyone's reactions when they first get into it. I'll be starting a full action-edited Let's Play Legend series as soon as this video is done rendering. If you're interested in that, you can click on the link on your screen right now and or in the video description down below. I'll be going a little bit slower than I have in the past as I'm going to take my time to explain all of the new mechanics and balance things and all that. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.